All right, welcome to Tales from the Service Industry. I'm your host. I'm Bill. I'm here tonight with Alex. He's joining us this evening for our first show.
Yes.
So Alex, welcome. What I'd like to do is if we can take just a couple minutes and give a little bit of a background on our work histories.
Okay.
Just so that those that are listening can kind of understand where we've been in the industry. So I'll go first. My first job in the service industry was as a bellman in a hotel, about a year and a half, and then transferred to the front desk. I did reservations, night audit, back to front desk, and then switched disciplines completely and found myself in a back house role working in housekeeping and spent about half my career in that position. Since then, I've gone on to do other things. Director of rooms, assistant general manager, GM, been around the block a little bit. Some departments that I haven't been in are food and beverage and sales. And I'm fine with both of those. Don't really care for either. It's not my cup of tea. But I know that that's, not the case for everyone. HR is another department that I've never been in and never want to be in. I know you laugh because that's part of your history. So,
of course.
I'd like to turn it over to you. Share a little bit about where you've been in the world.
Yeah. So, my first position in the hospitality industry was as a night auditor. I at first didn't know what I wanted to do career-wise, but I fell in love with the hospitality industry. So, being a night auditor gave me a kick, and I worked myself up, within the operations area in hospitality. So, front desk agent, front office supervisor, and then I was given an opportunity as an HR coordinator, and that's where I found my true passion. Moved around a little, became a department head, went back into HR, and now currently in AGM.
So you had mentioned at the beginning of what you shared that you hadn't planned on being in the hotel business.
Mm-hmm.
So what got you into it?
The people that I worked with, they were an eye-opener. I saw that the passion that they had and the career growth that they were going into, and that's what motivated me. Till this day, the people that I first worked with at my first hotel, I consider them, really close friends and more like family now. We're all still in the industry, and it's awesome because we can relate to a lot of stuff that's happened within the industry, whether it was when we worked together or now in our current positions, and the connection's deep, and they made me love hospitality.
Well, you touched on something that is actually the genesis for this whole podcast, and that is, our industry is full of people that may not have planned on being here, but have found a passion and a desire to stay in this business. And for those that are outside of our industry, they don't necessarily relate to us. But for those that are inside our industry, this podcast is for them.
Oh, yeah.
It's like this is where we can share the silly stories, the wild stories, the crazy stuff that happens. Mm-hmm. That's why I wanted to do it. I wanted to share that with everybody else.
I think it's awesome.
And it's a place that everybody can kind of relate to. If you're in the industry, you will absolutely relate to the stories and the situations. If you're not in the industry, well, you may relate, but hopefully maybe you'll learn something too, or learn what not to do. So I appreciate you being here, and thank you for sharing.
No, of course. Thank you for having me.
One of the things that I wanted to dig a little deeper into is, when we first started, whether it was, you and I or somebody that's listening, we all had some sort of an event at the beginning of our career that made us kind of wonder, is this what we've really signed up for? Is this where we're going to be? Is this, what we can expect moving forward? For me, one of those very first things was catching people in the throes of passion on a balcony. There's nothing quite like walking around the corner in the middle of the night, mm-hmm. Hearing people getting busy and finding them having intercourse right there on a balcony. Mm-hmm. For me, that particular situation was me shouting at the guy, "Hey, take it inside." And the guy looks at me, doesn't break stride, and just says, 2 minutes. What do you do? For me, I turned around and walked away. I came back 2 minutes later and they were gone. They were done. But it was a very, very awkward position for a young guy to be in, you know, and unfortunately, it's more common than people would like to think.
No, I agree. I've been in certain situations where I've questioned myself, is this the industry for me? I definitely have encountered, that situation where you're finding two individuals on the balcony or two individuals where the window's open and other guests can see. And it is an awkward situation where you have to be the person to go and tell them, hey, cut it out, or you're too loud, whatever the situation may be. But I think one area where I came in question was guest confrontation. In the very beginning in my hospitality career, guest confrontation was not my thing, right? You're new to the industry and you're barely getting to know the property itself and the operations of it. And I guess coming and yelling at you, and as a night auditor, you're alone and you don't really have support. So that made me question the beginning of my career, right? Whether this was for me, and if I wanted to be the one being yelled at night when I didn't have anybody to support me, or be able to say, here, talk to my supervisor, talk to my manager. But I worked with an awesome team at my property where they showed me how to deal with guest confrontation and how to make it from a negative to a positive. So I learned from what I was scared to do. And I mean, now I can say that, it's easy peasy to turn things around if you can.
It can be if you have the right tools.
Yeah.
Is there, like with confrontation and resolution, is there any tricks that you use to help you with that?
A lot of it is analyzing the situation and kind of putting your shoes in their shoes, right? If it's a housekeeping issue and you're walking into a dirty room or you're walking into an occupied room, you kind of need to analyze the situation. Be like, shoot, well, if that was me, I think I'd be upset too. So definitely analyzing the situation and hearing the guest out. A lot of the time, guests want to be heard before you start comping them this, giving them that, taking the time to actually hear them, and then apologizing, emphasizing with them, over the situation. And then after, if you need to compensate the guest, think outside the box and give yourself 2 to 3 options on what you can do for the guest, and then choose the best one, which fits the situation better, the needs, and in hopes that it works. A lot of the times, guests are understanding, and of course, you're always going to get those one guests that want more than what you can give them. But I've learned a lot from the past through my experience on how to deal with the situations by emphasizing with the guests and just kind of putting myself in their shoes.
That's something that I honestly wish I would have learned or been taught when I was a young buck working the front desk. One of my favorite stories about that situation is I had a guy that checked in that was upset with his room. I offered him an upgrade to a little larger suite. That wasn't good enough. I offered him a comp night. That wasn't good enough. I offered a lot of different things because the guy was upset. Mm-hmm. I got frustrated with him and finally just looked him in the eye and said, "What can I do to make you happy?" Which is not the right thing to say. Right. But I was not, at that time I was still new in the industry. I hadn't had, service recovery training, and I didn't have a mentor or a role model. So that, out of frustration, was kind of my go-to. And the guy looks at me and goes, "You know what? I just want a bottle of champagne." I thought to myself, well, shoot, I can make that happen. It's like I'd offered him, the first upgrade was a view upgrade. Then it was a category upgrade. Then it was a comp night. Then it was a comp night plus incidentals. And at the end of the day, he just wanted a bottle of champagne that literally cost me $8.
Shoot.
Now, the lesson from that was that I learned the hard way was don't assume and don't offer what they don't want. Mm-hmm. And I learned to listen through, hear a guest through, and kind of read between the lines.
Exactly.
But I wish I would have had someone that could have done that for me, and taught me what I needed to know versus learning the hard way.
No, right. I agree.
Night audit is a very unique shift because you are, I mean, a lot of times you'll have maybe one other person, two other people on property if it's a small hotel, and that's it. And I don't even know how many times you get those guests that are upset at 2:00 in the morning. You need to call your manager.
No.
Well, no, that ain't going to happen because my manager's really not going to want to give you the best service that you're probably expecting at 2:00 in the morning.
Exactly.
So working night audit, do you recall any crazy stories that happened on the night audit that you'd like to share or can share?
God. I have so many. I remember there was this guest. He looked like he was in his early 30s. He was wasted. He came in. I was at the front desk, and it was a pretty quiet night. He had to come in around 2, maybe 3 in the morning, and I was there. I had just finished on my night audit report, so just hanging at the desk, and he comes in and he's asking for a room key. And he provides me his ID, his information, and I can't find him on the system. For the life of me, I tried everything, and I was like, I can't find you. Mind you, I'm new to the property. I really wasn't thinking what I was thinking then. I wasn't thinking what I would think now. Which is the question. The question would be, are you at the right property, right? So we're literally maybe 30 minutes in, and he's just blowing up. He's cursing at me and yelling, and he's like, I checked in, hours ago. How could you not find my reservation? My room number is this number. Well, your name doesn't match his room number. I can't just give you a key. Like, whose name is it under, right? I'm not going to disclose that information. Finally, after 30 minutes, he pulls out his phone and he shows me the confirmation number or the confirmation. And this guest was literally located at another property, which was maybe a couple miles away. And after him cursing at me and yelling at me and frustrating me, he asked if I can drive him with our hotel shuttle van to that property. And I was like, dude, no.
But the customer's always right?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he seemed like he was right. And he was like, no, you have to take me and whatever. And I was like, no, I'm not going to take you. And then he starts flipping me off and creating a scene at the lobby. And I'm just like, okay, we'll have a good day. But it's just like, night audit, I mean, you can have those weird moments and then these annoying moments like this one guest. I've had to put a guest on a bell cart and take him to his room because he was wasted and passed out on the lobby. So between myself and security, we couldn't carry him. He was just too heavy. We put him on a bell cart and we took him to his room. Another incident was I had a guest. She called me from her room. She knew that her colleague was staying next door. And she called. She was like, hey, can you guys do a wellness check on him? Like, he was just screaming. Like, I know he's drunk and he was screaming for help, and now it's quiet. And I was just like, oh, shoot. Well, yeah, let me go up with engineering just to go check. At that time, we had an overnight engineer. So we go up and we hear the shower running, but no one's answering. So we open the door as a wellness check, and the dude's passed out naked with legs open on the floor. He had to have slipped and fall from the shower.
He was injured?
No, he wasn't, surprisingly.
Oh, okay.
He seemed he probably just slipped and fell on his towel, but he was fine. We left him there.
There's not much you can do.
I wasn't
shut the water off.
That's what we did. We shut the water off, and we left him there. He was breathing, and then within like an hour, we went and checked on him again, and he had crawled himself to bed. But that was kind of gross. And a
Seems
funny,
like, I mean, not to interrupt, sorry.
no, of
But,
course.
with night audit, the resounding number of guests that you get problems with either typically revolve around being drunk or high and fraud.
Yeah.
You know, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
there's very little in between.
Mm-hmm.
I worked night audit for a hot minute. I think it was like 6 months, maybe 8, and that was it. So I didn't. I mean, I wasn't a career night auditor. I don't have the personality for that. Um, night auditors are a special breed.
They are. They are.
They're great at their jobs, but they are a special breed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for myself, most of it revolved around people coming back drunk, high, or trying to steal from us. You know, in our industry, the number one shift that gets the shadiest of the shady is the night auditors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we were saying earlier, you know, nobody's going to call their manager at 2:00 in the morning to, you know, get approval to manually punch in a credit card. It's just not going to happen. But that's where we would see the most fraud. You know, the old trick about, oh yeah, you know, the credit card, the stripe is demagnetized. It's okay to punch in the numbers. No, it's not okay to punch in the numbers. If I can't swipe that card or it can't be read by the chip, I'm not taking it. Period. You know, and we would get guests that would demand that I call a manager for approval at 2:00 in the morning. It's never going to happen. All of our night auditors have been hit with the most frequent and blatant credit card fraud ever. One one of my favorites was a night auditor at a property that I was at just a couple years ago that received it was a credit card, but it was from EDD, the Economic Development Division, or whatever it is, the unemployment card.
Mm-hmm.
You know, unemployment benefits are for a particular individual. So if it was issued to you, it has your name on it, right? You know, this woman brought in a credit card that had 2 names stamped on it. The original card holder and then her own. But her name was spaced differently than his name was. It wasn't straight. It was at a weird sloping angle, and it just didn't look right. When the night auditor was given the card, she immediately challenged it and wanted the ID. The woman provided a bogus ID as well.
Oh gosh.
You know, it didn't feel right, didn't look right. It was a low quality print. It was just terrible. So she kept it, and the woman became irate. She wanted her stuff back, demanded that she give it back or that she was going to call the police. The night auditor looks at her and says, "That's okay. I'll call them for you." Picks up the phone to start to call the local police department. Woman freaks out and runs away. Well, that's not the sign of a valid ID and credit card holder.
Yeah.
You know, but at 2:00 in the morning, she was gambling on the fact that this night auditor is going to be poorly trained, not have, you know, a strong sense of following policies, and would cave in. And she didn't.
You know what I think? I think night auditors are the best trained within the front desk. They're more aware. They're more alert to these situations.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
So when there's people trying to do these sketchy things, night audit isn't probably the best shift to do them.
I would agree. The other thing that night auditors have that I think is far superior to a lot of the front desk agents is that because they are on their own so much, they just learn to think on their own. They're very autonomous.
Yeah.
They're also very conscious of, you know, processes and what needs to be done first, second, and third, because if they don't follow those protocols, they can't successfully run their night audit shift.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I would agree with you. I think night auditors, for the most part, is where you don't want to try and pass bogus stuff. God, on that note, holy cow, on that note, and this is something I have a photo for. I can post on Instagram. I had a front desk agent during the day that was passed a counterfeit $100 bill. Now, they marked it, like they used the currency pins back in the day. They checked it. It came back as legitimate, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a wash bill. So it was the real paper, but obviously not a real bill. But to make matters worse, it had Chinese characters on it, on the front and the back.
What?
Yeah, it was the worst. It was the worst counterfeit $100 bill. Well, not the worst. I take that back. It was the second worst counterfeit $100 bill I've ever seen because it was so blatant. I mean, like if you look at it, it looked legit. Like it didn't look like it was a poorly printed thing.
Mm-hmm.
but the Chinese characters were not something you could miss. Probably the worst counterfeit $100 bill I ever saw was a washed bill that was printed on a $1 bill. And then what they did is they took the identification strip out of 100 and they glued it to the back. So, when the front desk agent held it up to the light, they held it up looking at the front of the bill, not the back, at the front of the bill, and they can see the little $100 stripe. So the front, for that one, I was actually standing with the front desk agent. And she did that. She goes, oh, okay. She goes to put it in her drawer. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. That's not how we check a $100 bill. Flipped it over. And that's when I felt the identification strip for the 100 just glued to the back of the bill. It's like, come on.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I'm not a counterfeiter, but I could have done a better job than that.
Right.
But yeah, to your point, catching fraud is not just a night audit thing, but I agree with you. I think night auditors are probably the best trained for that.
No, they really are. Again, they're more alert to the situations, and they're independent. They don't have a manager or supervisor. They are the manager. And I feel like a lot of night auditors have that mentality that they're running the show.
I agree. They are the most vocal of your front desk staff. Usually, like when you have a meeting and you actually get a night auditor there, they are the ones that share the most.
Yes.
Because they have no qualms throwing everybody under the bus that jams them up on the night audit shift.
Yeah.
You're not closing out your work. You don't batch your credit cards, whatever. And it causes them to stop. They're going to put you on blast.
What's funny is I worked at this big box property where I was a night auditor for a minute. And my director of front office had our support at all times. Anything that we said went, and he always wanted us to report the discrepancies that we would find, and you have no idea how many we would find. And when we would host our front desk monthly meetings, we were the voice of the front desk. He would give us, the opportunity to, speak about, what we're finding during the night audit process, whether agents aren't dropping their drops. There are discrepancies on reservations, on parking charges, market charges, and even food and beverage. Receipts missing, whatever the case may be. So we had a big part of that voice when we would have our staff meeting monthly. So yeah, I 100% agree with you that they're going to be the number one people that are going to point out what's going on within the department. They're the ones that, although you don't see them during the day or morning, they're the ones that overall see everything. They know the front desk, and they see everything that goes on even when you don't see them, right?
Yeah. And if you're a front desk agent listening to this, if you do an adjustment, explain your adjustment.
Yes.
Don't just put service recovery or guest was upset. We know that.
What was the reason?
Yeah, explain the fact that the guest didn't get their room clean for the last 3 days. That's your explanation.
Justify it.
Yeah, I mean, service recovery as a reason is what drives auditors to drink.
Oh God!
I used to actually work with a night auditor that was unfortunately an alcoholic, and literally could not function without a couple of shots of tequila. Yeah, it was crazy.
That is nuts. I would pass out if I did that.
Yeah. And this is way back in the day. And this is, also one of those things that if I would have known better as a young employee, I would have handled differently, because drinking on the job is not cool. But, I would work, a lot of times I would work 3 to 11 or a 4 to midnight shift. And, the auditor has been there for a little bit and starts to melt down, screaming the F word, yanking on the desk, throwing things. Yeah, he was jonesing for a shot of tequila.
Well, I hope he had his bottle.
And you know what? He actually would take his lunch break and go to the little mart down the street. Yeah.
No, I could never.
Crazy employees. God, on the note of like employees drinking on the job, I used to work with this guy that was a bellman that was a chronic drinker. I don't think he was alcoholic, because he he didn't have the kind of the physical traits of coping with alcoholism. He just wanted to party. The guy would come in just lit at 5 o'clock in the morning to start his shift. He would put bell cards together in the storage room and then lay on it like a bed.
What?
Yeah. He would punch in, make his little bed, lay down for an hour and try and get caught up.
You know, I'm not gonna lie. I've created my own bed at one point.
Out of necessity or
Yes, being tired.
what's the craziest guest request you've ever had?
I worked at a hotel where we had a big, contract with an airline.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, these flight attendants would sleep with each other, and we all knew it. They were all, in heat. There was this one particular flight attendant who had the same person. So, flight attendants travel, right?
What?
So when he would come, he would have this guy come. He would have this guy always come and see him in the middle of the night. And we kind of caught off to what they were doing, only to find out that one of our front office supervisors found the flight attendant and the guy that he would bring every week in the middle of the night on an online pornography site. It was
as a content provider, or like
a video. Yeah,
or like selling services.
I think content provider would be
okay.
Yeah, they had multiple videos together, and of course we knew it was our guest rooms. We know the painting, we know the room design. I think we should get credit. We should have gotten credit for it. But yeah, I mean, flight attendants are wild.
It's kind of funny, like, you find yourself in a situation like that where it develops, and whether it's however you find the videos, and you see your own hotel in it. I've been in that situation before.
It's wild, but
it's like, I recognize that decor.
And then ever since we saw the video, it was just kind of hard to like communicate with this flight attendant, because you want to be like, hey, I've seen your stuff. But then again, you're just like, nah. But I mean, flight attendants, some of them are, I met some really cool ones, and they were really nice, and we always serviced them the best that we could. But then you have these ones that are horrible.
Yeah. I've got more stories about flight attendants than I care to admit. But
gosh.
I before we go down this path of sharing these, I just want to stress the fact that, stories like this about their industry are kind of the punctuation marks. It's not the norm. It's not that every flight attendant has scandalous behavior and whatnot. Most of them, the vast majority of them, are awesome. Just like the vast majority of our guests are awesome. It's that 1% of 1% that like throws everything off, or creates the stigma. That being said, let's share some flight attendant stories.
Oh gosh, there was this. I'm never gonna forget this one. So we had the flight crew come in at night, and we had a couple flight crews coming in every day. So about 3 a day, maybe 4. The last one would come in roughly around night audit time, around midnight, and it was always about 30 flight attendants who would come in. And we came in, the flight attendants hated the second floor. They hated it.
Why was that?
Because the second floor didn't have balconies, and all the other ones did. So they called.
Because they want to go smoke it on the patio instead of having to come down to the smoking area.
Apparently, they can't. After flying for X amount of hours, they couldn't breathe. So in a way, I understood it, but then in a way, I was just like,
All right. Well, if there's any
So
flight attendants listening to this, please let me know how you can't breathe after a
yeah,
flight.
please let us
Yeah.
know. So there was this time where they came in and we were sold out. So we would always pre-check in the reservations before they showed in. All we would do was issue them their allowances and their keys, and they would go to the room. And a lot of the times there would be times where we had to assign them the second floor because we didn't have any other room. So I assigned, no, this lady was already pre-checked into a second floor room, but we were completely booked already. Everybody was checked in. They were the last, group coming in. So we were at 100% all rooms occupied. This lady refused to even go up the elevator to this room. She refused, and she said that she was going to wait in the lobby until it became available. And I was like, well, you're probably looking about maybe 1 p.m. tomorrow. I don't know what to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I did some searching in the system. We did have a room available for the AM flight attendants who would come in at 6 a.m. So those rooms were already checked in the night before so that the AM crew can just check in and go up to the room. Me and my best friend, well, she's my best friend now, we were working that shift together. And because of the way the flight attendant was coming at us, she refused to move her rooms. So the lady sat in the lobby, and then all the flight attendants would go out to the bar or get some stuff from, the pantry. And they were all stopping. They were like, hey, what's going on? Why aren't you in your room? And she was just talking all this mad crap. We called her supervisor. Her supervisor came down, and he was like, just go to the room. They'll switch you tomorrow. She refused. We called their
Yeah. Station manager.
yeah, and we told them the situation. They spoke to her, and she still refused to go to the room. So at this point, their station manager was just like, leave her there. The room's there, and if she wants to go, she'll go, and if she doesn't, she won't. So she came to the front desk after maybe an hour and a half, and she threw her keys at us. And my friend was livid. She was like, no, she's not getting a room. Like, she's going to stay there. I felt bad because the poor lady was there. It was already like 3 a.m. And she was just sitting there, and I was just like, dude, like, our GM's going to come, and he's going to be like, what the hell? So then I was just like, let's just give her the room. And she made her wait about an hour more. So 4 a.m. And she was like, here's your keys. And I don't know what this flight attendant said. I forgot exactly what she said. But it was basically about her weight. And
About your coworker.
yeah, my coworker's weight. I don't remember the exact words, but I just remember that my coworker looked at her, and she shouldn't have done this, but she threw the keys, at her the way she threw him at us. And I'm not talking about how she slid him in the counter. Like, she physically threw it at us. So my coworker did the same thing to her and threw it at her, and she made her fetch for it. I was completely shocked, but I mean, realistically, I think she kind of deserved it. It's not something that I would do to a guest. I don't think I have that capability.
Right.
But yeah, she was one of the tough ones, and after that, she would just, when she would come and check in, she would just give us that little nasty look, like,
It's kind of ironic that, on an aircraft, if you were to have behaved even half of that, at your destination, you'd be getting off the plane to an air marshal or
and
airport police or whatever.
I remember us telling her, listen, when you're at a full capacity plane and if there's not a seat available, what do you do? Like, it's the same scenario. Like, how do you're in our, in the plane, you're in our position, you're dealing with the guest. How do you deal with it? And I remember us telling her that. And she said that it was different, and that, flight attendants and front desk were completely opposite and whatnot. And I remember my friend telling her that it's the same service. We're servicing the guests, right? If I was a flight attendant and we're at 100% capacity, I'm not gonna have somebody else move just to please you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else reserved that seat already. Somebody else has already checked into that seat. At that point, you just gotta deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I understand that the jobs are not. There's not a direct comparison. As hotel employees, we're not. We're trained on what to do in a fire. We're trained on what to do in a power outage, things of that nature. But hotels don't crash.
Right.
It's like there's no emergency evacuation procedures like there are on a plane. So I understand that the correlation is different. But where I have issue with behavior like what you saw is that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your job is. You treat people like people.
Yeah.
You don't treat them like dirt. You don't treat them like they're beneath you.
I agree.
Because if I did that to her on the flight and was belligerent to her, it would have ended very, very differently. I mean, now you get duct taped to your seat and handcuffed upon landing.
Yeah.
It yeah, situations like that should just never happen.
There was another situation where a flight attendant, it was a morning flight attendant. He was down in the lobby around 5 a.m. and he had switched rooms the previous night, and he had left his uniform in that room. And it's 5 a.m. He's down in the lobby. They're ready to departure, and he's like, "No, I need my uniform." At this particular property, Lost and Found was locked away. The only person that had access to the Lost and Found was the director of housekeeping and the housekeeping coordinator. They were the only two that had access. The director front office, not even the housekeeping manager had, access to the Lost and Found. Once it was locked and the housekeeping director was gone, you had to wait until they came in, the next shift.
And why is that?
I don't know.
It's the reason it's that way is so that when the hotel has possession and it's found, it remains found.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that it's inconvenient for a guest that wants, a watch that they left behind, on a previous stay, and it's 9:00 at night, and they want their watch back. But if the executive housekeeper, whoever's in charge, is not there, it's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm. And he threw a big old scene at the front desk. And again, my best friend and I were working together. And it was war in the lobby between them both. And I remember she just snapped and she had to go to the back office and cry it out because sometimes, at the front desk, you're just biting your tongue and there's not much you can say and you want to say, right? Mm-hmm. And I stepped in and I yelled at him and I was like, you know what? You're going to go to work without your uniform. Figure it out. It's not our responsibility to tell you that you left things behind in your room. It's your responsibility to ensure that all your belongings are within your possession. Unfortunately, we didn't call the housekeeping director to come retrieve his items, and I mean it was what it was. We stood our ground, and he went off. He tried blaming us, and he said he was going to call a GM and call corporate and call his station manager, whatever the case may be. And we were like, that's fine, but at the end of the day, it was your responsibility to have your possessions within your arm's reach.
Oh, you mean it's not your fault that he left it in the old room?
No, it's not.
It's not your fault that he didn't realize it until 5:00 in the morning?
Exactly.
Wow.
He's nuts.
Like that whole thing about taking responsibility for your actions, though. So the first hotel that I ever worked at, similar to you, had a lot of airline crews. Where it was located it was in a small town, beach location. It was on an island. And one of the amenities that the hotel had was bikes, like mountain bikes.
Yes, we had the same.
Okay, so the air crews could sign them out. There was no charge for them. You just had to sign it out, sign it back in. Simple. Mm-hmm. Pilot went out for a bike ride one day, was riding on the sidewalk, which is illegal. And as he's going down the sidewalk, somebody pulled out of their driveway, blocking the sidewalk. He hits them, goes over the hood, breaks his leg. Now the flight is supposed to go out later that evening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can't fly with a broken leg. So unfortunately, because of where the hotel was, the soonest that they could get a pilot in would be hours. Like, I mean, this is a 5-hour flight.
Yeah.
So, hours to get the pilot there, and then they have a rest period, and then they can fly out. Well, the pilot that broke his leg blames the hotel.
For what?
Defective bike.
Oh.
It's like, dude, you're riding on the sidewalk and you hit a car. How is that a defective bicycle? It's like you hit the car hard enough to go over the hood and break your leg when you landed. How fast were you riding that bike on a sidewalk? But it's our fault?
And how'd you guys go about it?
What do you mean?
Like when dealing with, him blaming the property.
Oh, unfortunately, the insurance company had to get involved, the underwriter for the hotel, and legal got involved. And I mean, the airline contract it's a big contract. You don't want to lose the airline contract.
Mm-hmm.
But over a situation like this, where it's not our fault, but you're trying to make it our fault, has incredible implications for the hotel. It's got implications for the airline as well.
Mm-hmm.
He made such a big deal about it, but to my knowledge, it never went anywhere.
Good.
But I mean, the thing that I felt really bad for about was the fact that 280 some people had their flight delayed.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all those people went to the airport, all those people checked in, all those people checked their bags, all those people came back to different hotels because their flight couldn't go out.
I'd be I'd be pissed.
I would be pissed too, I mean, nobody knew, but if it got out that your flight was canceled because your pilot broke his leg riding a bike on a sidewalk and hit a car, I personally wouldn't be very sympathetic about it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's not my problem. That's your problem because you didn't know how to ride a bike in the right place. But 280 people paid the price.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine what the cost to the airline is to cancel a flight because of that.
Pretty pricey, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, that's probably why he was claiming that it was the hotel's fault with a faulty bicycle. A faulty bike that he had ridden 15 miles already before the accident. Probably just trying to put himself in the best light.
Well, I hope it didn't go as well for him.
Probably not. Getting away from airlines, but have you ever had a regular guest that had just an obnoxious interaction with you like that?
Yes. Shoot, I've had more than a dozen. I can tell you that. I had a guest. Oh gosh, during the pandemic, I think has been the area where I've had guests like that. I worked for a property, and during the pandemic, we were closed. We reopened, forecasting that it was going to be slow. We weren't going to get as much business because of the pandemic. All of our amenities were closed, including the gym and pool. Little did we know that locals were going to be coming in and staying with us.
Despite stay-at-home orders and quarantine requirements.
And oh my gosh, this hotel had these special kind of guests, and I'm not even gonna go there, but we just had special kind of guests. And
do I know which hotel this is?
Yes.
All right.
And we would get I'm sorry for my language, but the shittiest guests during COVID. They would blame us for not having the amenities open. They would come in and they'd be like, "You ruined my daughter's birthday. We came here for the pool. We're here to have a slumber party." And I'm just looking at them like, damn, we're like in an area where people are dying, and you're over here tripping about, having a sleepover with, these 8-year-old girls in a room. Now they're in the room and they're ruining everything, and they're requesting for 8-10 sets of towels, and you're like, what the heck? And they switch out the towels, and they're damaging the towels with makeup and paint, and whatever they're using in there, and those were the kind of clients we were getting, and it was like this every day. I kid you not. Getting blamed and us having to retell them that, keep in mind, we're in a pandemic. You're not going to get what you want. The rates are low. You have a clean room. You have a clean space. And they'd try to find reasons to have a comp night. And I'm so thankful that I had an amazing GM who stood her ground and supported us in our decisions. If we said that you were going to get a comp night, you were getting a comp night. No.
Good.
And those were the kind of guests that I would get. And I'm happy that I'm out of that property. Because, as soon as we started picking up, it just got worse. And dealing with those situations were just very exhausting.
Yeah, my favorite during that time was when, people would check in for 2 or 3 nights. They were clearly not there for quarantine or for, a legitimate reason for travel during the pandemic, and then do the exact same thing, find problems with the rooms and want comp this or comp that. My favorite response that I started going back to was, well, before we discuss compensation, let's discuss your purpose for travel. Because at that time there were travel restrictions in place, where it was essential travel only and quarantine.
Yeah.
So, okay, you booked for 3 nights, you're finding all these issues. Your address on your registration card shows that you're local. Why are you here? Well, it was for my daughter's birthday. Oh, so it was for an illegitimate purpose of travel. And you want me to comp your night? No, ain't gonna happen.
I should have thought about that.
It only came to me as we were about to shut down the hotel that I was at the time.
Oh, gosh.
So, unfortunately, I didn't have it early on either.
I remember we had an overdose. We had this program staying at our property where they would help families out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And locate them to a property and help, whether it be like home insurance or relocation, just helping families. So there was a family staying at our property, and they had been there for maybe like a month and a half already.
Mm-hmm.
And their son overdosed. Their son was 17. And I don't know why these parents thought it was a good idea to give their son his own room and his own space. And he had friends over during COVID, and that's where he overdosed. I wasn't there for the situation. At that time, I was an MOD for the property, and another MOD was on shift during that time, and she had to go and do CPR. And when she went up there, he was pale white, and it didn't look like he was breathing. So she did all the necessary things, to take action for his well-being, and luckily he made it. Right, paramedics got there. And he just became a liability, and we had to ask the family that we weren't going to keep them there anymore, and that they had to find a new relocation. Like, we can't support this. The son, the next day, he decides to call the hotel and say why we're evicting them out of the property. And I remember answering that call, and I was just like, dude, like, you're a liability. Like, you're nuts if you think we're going to extend you, right? Or keep you and your family here. Like, we can't support this. Our GM was very supportive of the situation. She was like, nope, get him out. They tried making it a big fuss, saying that it was an accident and, things happen. And it's just like, no, bad parenting happens. Like, keep an eye on your kid.
You tripped and fell on the needle that was stuck in your arm.
Yeah. Oh gosh, but 17, I was very odd to the situation. But yeah, when I answered the phone and he asked why, I was very confused to why he would even ask why.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, well, you have some pairs to even be asking.
He probably didn't remember much of the night before.
Oh God, I'm sure he did.
Yeah, you never know. But it's like, okay, here, I'll give you 2 reasons. 1, you're doing illegal narcotics in our hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, last night you were dead in my hotel.
Yes. Oh gosh. Talking about death. No. That's a wild subject
Yeah.
in
Well,
hotels.
I mean, for the most part, nobody dies in a hotel because, we're not doctors. We can't pronounce you.
Right.
But I've unfortunately seen a fair amount of that in a hotel. God, let's see, in my time, I've seen 2 drownings, 1 overdose, one elderly, no, actually, I'm sorry, 2 elderly people that just passed away in their sleep.
Wow.
And then there was one property that I had been at that fortunately it didn't happen when I was there, but it was a rather tall building that had balconies. I think it was 10 floors, 11 floors. And several people checked in just to commit suicide,
That's
tossing themselves off of a balcony. Yeah.
that's crazy. And I don't think. I mean, if people have been in the industry long enough, I feel like that death, like these situations are very common in hotels.
Unfortunately.
At my first property, I remember checking in the guest and his friends. They seemed normal, early 20s, seemed like they were gonna go out, have fun, whatever. Checked them in, left, came back, only to find out that the young guy that I checked in, very nice guy, OD'd and died in the room. And I remember I had upgraded him to a suite on the second floor, and oh God, I refused to walk at all on the second floor. I would not go and do my rounds there. Like no, it was just very shocking to me because although I didn't see him, dead on the floor, I saw him upon checking in, and just to think that, dude, like you were fine and you look normal, you didn't look crazy.
A couple hours later, you were gone.
Yeah. So there's
And
there.
God forbid your housekeeping team finds out that somebody died in a room.
Oh gosh.
They'll never clean it again, or at least not by themselves.
No, they probably wouldn't.
Mm-mm.
But I mean, I've heard so many death stories, with the friends that I have within in the hospitality industry. Um, I There's a certain brand where guests or people, like your property would go and check in just to jump off.
Mm-hmm.
There's a property, maybe how many years ago? Maybe 3 years ago. Me and some friends from my first property took a trip out to Arizona. We enjoyed ourselves, and as we were driving on our way back, my friend, she gets a text message, and she's like, well, not a text message, an email, basically management telling everybody if they need counseling over the situation, that it's available all week or whatever the case may be. There was a gentleman who went to the property, went to the 12th floor of the property, the atrium, and wasn't was planning to make a scene of seeming like it was gonna be suicide,
Mm.
and it ended up being an accidental death. He slipped and
So he wanted the attention. So if I'm hearing you right, he wanted the attention like he was going to do it, but didn't actually intend to do it, but ultimately succeeded in doing what he
Mhm.
did. Oh,
He
jeez.
slipped and fell, and from what they said, it was a loud echo, and you just heard the pounds, and people from the guest rooms, open doors only to find out that there's a dead body in the middle of the building.
Tough situation.
But I mean, it is a tough situation, and I think the subject is very, um, it's gnarly. It's insane. It's crazy to think that, people do these things and they go through this hardship, and a lot of the time people are in the right state of mind. So yeah.
That's tough.
Hmm.
It's a tough subject to come back from. Is there, okay, so, we talked about difficult guests. Is there a guest that you've said something to that looking back on it, you may regret based on the situation?
Yes. No, I wouldn't say I regretted, but I did think about it after the way I came across the situation. The guys kept, I forgot what she was complaining about, and she kept rubbing her top tier, to me, and
Like
I,
rewards member
yeah,
tiers?
she was a
Okay.
top tier. She was like, I'm this tier, and I was just getting so frustrated with her because she wouldn't stop. And in the hotel business with brands who have tiers, you hear it a lot. I'm this, I'm that, and we appreciate you. Yes, we do, but we don't appreciate you when you're rubbing it in our faces. And I remember I had to stop with what I was doing, and I looked at her in the face and I told her, "Let me correct you. Your husband's tier." you She smacked the desk and she was like, "Excuse," she yelled it out.
That's awesome.
And I left it at that, and then I went to the back office because I could not deal with her. And then I thought about it. I was just like, shoot, what did I say?
That's brutal. That's savage. But you're right though. I mean, like, God, just last week I had a very similar situation. Woman checks in and she wanted everything that a platinum member gets, but it was her husband that was the platinum member. He wasn't even traveling with her. So it's like, I shouldn't be giving you any of this.
Nope.
And it's
From
like,
the bottom.
well, my husband is this. Okay, well,
Where's
how does that translate?
Mm.
I don't have muscles because you go to the gym. You earn it, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that you get just to get.
Mm-hmm.
So
No, I 100% agree. Man, but yeah, I had to think about what I said, and I was just like, no. But I don't regret it. I'm glad I said it. Hopefully it was an eye opener for her not to be using that again.
Probably not. Let's be honest. Probably not.
Should have asked her if she wanted to enroll. Oh gosh.
Oh, well, that's your husband, but if you'd like to enroll, we can get you on your way.
Exactly.
Man. All right. So I'll share one of my bad customer service moments. This is way back machine to when I first started in the business. But this guy comes in real late at night. He had reserved, and look, this was a long time ago, but the whole thing just burned into my memory. The guy wanted a non-smoking, south side, high floor, king bedded room. Now, the hotel was only 6 stories tall. So, high floor is kind of subjective, right? Mm-hmm. What we were able to provide him was a king bed, non-smoking, 3rd floor, south side. So he comes in late. He is the last reservation due in for the night. I have, 265 rooms total in the hotel. 264 are either occupied or reserved. So I have 1 spare room. The guy comes in, he registers, he wants to know where his room is. I explain to him it's on the 3rd floor. He gets pissed. I requested non-smoking, king bed, south side, high floor. I said, I understand, but it is a request. It's not a guarantee. We have you non-smoking, king bed, south side, 3rd floor. That is the best that I can do for you. He looks at me and he says, you need to look in your computer and find another option. So I explained to him, we are nearly at capacity. I have your room and I have 1 other. But I know you're not going to want the other because while it's on a higher floor, it's on the 5th floor. It's 2 double beds. It's still non-smoking, but it's on the opposite side of the building. He says, I want to look at it. Okay, here's a set of keys. Feel free to look at it, but I understand that this is not what you're looking for. He says, I'll be the judge of that. Takes the keys and leaves. Short time later, he comes back, throws the keys on the counter. Doesn't place them down, doesn't, have a civil conversation, throws them down. Says, that room is not what I want either. You need to give me a better room. Now, keeping in mind, he never even saw the first room. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I explained to him again, I have a total of 2 rooms in the hotel. Non-smoking king bed, south side, 3rd floor, non-smoking double beds, 5th floor, north side of the building. Not good enough. Again, he says, you need to look in that computer. You need to find me a solution. at this point, I've already had it enough with this guy, and my inexperience at the time kicks in. And I looked at him and I said, well, let's recap the options. I said, I've got the first room that I offered to you, and I ran through the description. The second room, ran through the description. And at this point, I was so frustrated, I said, or there's a third option, and that is that since you haven't checked in yet, you can take your bags, you can take your wife, get in your car, and go somewhere else. I'll cancel your reservation. Silence. Now, his wife, who's been in the lobby the entire time, saying nothing the entire time, starts yelling at him in Spanish. Now, I don't know what she said. I know she was heated. I know it was not good because there were a few keywords that I could pick out. Mm-hmm. The guy looks at me and goes, the first room will be just fine. Ta-da!
Oh,
should I have said what I said to him? Absolutely not. But inexperience took over, and fortunately, his wife was on our side.
Good. I mean, if I were in that situation, and you know what? I've been in that situation where guests want to see the other room, and me personally, I wouldn't have given them a set of keys to go check out the room. You either want it or you don't.
Yeah, true.
And that's at least that's my weighing process. And I've been in that situation where they're not happy with the first room and they want to see a second option. I tell them just look online.
You know, at this point in my career, I'd probably do the same thing. But again, young and dumb, I didn't know any better.
Oh, gosh.
You know, said way too many stupid things to people back in the day.
You know, I think we all have.
Yeah. Not unwarranted, just probably not justified, I guess. No, it was justified.
Oh.
Well, look, on that note, let's end this here.
Okay.
Thank you for being with us. I appreciate your time and stories. Hopefully we can have you come back again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me, and love this concept.
Nice. You're welcome. If you're listening and you want to submit a story or, share some crazy things that have happened to you, we would welcome that. It doesn't have to be hotel related. It can be anything service related. So restaurants, airlines, car rentals, you name it. If you work with the public, would love to hear from you, especially those folks that work retail at return counters. Please, if you work retail at a return counter, send us an email with the story. For photos and things, I'll post like that counterfeit bill on my Instagram. You can find it at Tales from the Service Industry. If you want to email, then you reach out to us at talesfromtheserviceindustry@gmail.com. Make sure you include name and submit a little bit of information about you. And if we choose your story to talk about, then we'll give you a little shout out.
Perfect.
Everybody loves credit, right?
Right.
All right. Well, until the next episode, have a great evening.
Bye.